so I want to keep things moving. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Abby Moss. I am a born and raised Iowa County resident. I'm here with my husband Jared along with my father-in-law Stuart, and I'm proud to be a farmer in Iowa County. I'm proud to be a resident of Iowa County, and that is where my passion for this project has started. I have a passion for helping families in this area. Jamie Stahl created a Facebook group a while back to draw awareness to the topic of wind turbines coming to Iowa County, which is why I found out about this. Okay. This is how I found out about the topic, which was concerning to me that I had to find out about such a major project coming into our county. I'm pretty confident in saying that there's a lot of people in this county that are also on the same page as me that did not know about this until a couple months ago, even though easements were signed 3 years ago. There were very big publications in our supervisor's minutes that we were supposed to use to be able to understand that turbines were coming to the county, which I'm pretty sure very little of us deduced that from what they had written. The little awareness that was drawn around this issue caused very little public input on it as well. So now here we are today with an agreement already in place with a wind energy company, and we're just now getting a public voice on that, which I find very concerning. This is why Jamie and I decided to hold a public meeting on this topic. Tonight we're going to focus on some of the negative impacts of wind turbines. When you look online, you'll be able to find plenty of pro topics and pro wind resources that'll tell you how green and clean they are. What you will not find is how it affects the people that live around them. Many of the people who'd like to speak out about living around these turbines cannot because they signed a gag order or they've already settled with the company and they have signed a non-disclosure agreement. Whether or not you are for wind turbines, we need an ordinance to protect those that are going to be around them, even the landowners who signed up. If you talk to people with turbines already, many tell you that companies can't be trusted to holding their promise. You might live in town and think that it won't affect you, but I honestly believe that it will. Maybe you'll be lucky enough to never see the turbines from your property, but unfortunately many people in our county will. There will be families, ones with young children, that will take the brunt of the negative effects. I believe that we should be required to take their lives into consideration when forming an opinion on this topic. And if that isn't enough, consider how it will affect property values, wildlife, radar, and cell signals. I urge everyone to push for a strong ordinance and will lay out the details in this presentation. You have to let the supervisors know how you feel on this topic because they continue to believe and tell us that the majority of the residents in our county are supportive of turbines, let alone being in close proximity to others' homes. We're not here tonight to tell you that you can't have turbines in Iowa County. We just want more protection around them. You can make your voice known by contacting the supervisors personally, signing our petition that's going to be going around the room, which also please sign in the sign-in sheet. You can attend the supervisors meeting tomorrow, which I will touch on later, and tell everybody that you know about this issue. I know it's difficult because we all know people who have signed an easement, but we're entitled to want protection for everyone in the county. Many of us, including Jamie and I, have had a lot at stake by going public on our opinion because we farm, own businesses, or are in the public eye. We can't let this dissuade us or scare us from coming forward. I'm in contact with many concerned families who are frightened by the effects that the turbines are going to possibly have on their family when they come in. And if you won't stand up and push for an ordinance because of your own interests, do it for them. That's my beginning. We'll start on in.
Okay, so thank you all for coming tonight. I apologize that you may not be able to hear us. We're doing the best that we can.
Come down the middle.
Okay, so
So you have to shout, because these people can't hear at all.
why Iowa County?
Stand in the middle. There you go.
24 counties in the state of Iowa that do not have zoning. Iowa County is one of those. That means that a developer does not have to pay for a permit to put up a wind turbine. So that's one reason why these developers are interested in Iowa County. We also do not have any wind energy ordinances that protect the public or have a setback distance. So to give you a little bit of background, Invenergy first approached the supervisors in November, December 2015. Iowa County, the Board of Supervisors also passed an ordinance, Ordinance 27, you can find it on their website, in July 2015, which allows for the special valuation of a wind conversion property, a wind farm, wind turbine, any kind of facility for property taxes. That is the only ordinance that we have in place today. There is not a measure in the state a lot of people have asked, why can't we vote yes or no on this? There isn't a measure in the state of Iowa to add this to the ballot.
You can add it.
Okay, Diamond Trail, the developer is Invenergy. That's who has been going around collecting the easements. That's, what the easement contracts are with, it's with Invenergy. The utility company is with Mid-American Energy. Invenergy will sell the energy to Mid-American, this is already under contract, it's a done deal, as long as Invenergy upholds their side of the agreement. This will be for 78 turbines, approximately. This map was generated by the FAA, Federal Aviation. So Invenergy and Mid-American had to notify the FAA that they were going to erect turbines that could interfere with their navigation. So from that, we have built this map. So the turbines will be anywhere from 500 to 600 feet tall. They have said that by building a taller one that's 600 feet tall, that then there'd be fewer turbines. This is the tallest in the state. The ones that you drive by on the interstate are anywhere from 200 to 400 feet tall. The only other building in the state of Iowa that's as tall or taller is the Principal Financial Building in Des Moines. They have said that they will prep the ground this summer and that the turbines could be erected early next year. The energy will not be, nobody in Iowa County will use the energy.
Say that statement again.
No one
Nobody
in Iowa County.
will use the energy. So we have a setback agreement, that the Board of Supervisors signed with Invenergy last week, or on May 31st. Mid-American was not present when they signed that contract. This only allows for setbacks, which you can see in Appendix C. I'm sorry that we're short on, paper.
We can post that to some media
However,
later.
something to note is it said that the project was 78 turbines. So is that 40 turbines now, another 30 some in the future? This setback agreement does not apply to future turbines with Mid-American or with other developers. Anything I missed?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Alright, so I'm gonna talk about how landowners get paid. Basically, the landowners are going to grant an easement over their ground to the company. The company then has the right to construct wind turbines, electric transformers, energy storage facilities, telecommunications equipment, power generation facilities, and overhead or underground electrical lines. So these maps that you see here and then over there, those are people that have given easement over their ground. It does not mean that a turbine's going on every one of those parcels. They have signed over, they could get a turbine, they could get electrical lines, they could get a battery facility for the turbines later down the road. These easements that they're signing are for 25 years. The company, only the company, not the landowner, has the option to extend it for another 10 years. So when we're doing this, one of our major concerns with this project is maybe they're not gonna put a turbine up now or an electrical line now, and you think your ground's fine, you're getting your $5 an acre and you're good to go. But when 10 years roll down the road and they wanna connect the big power line, they have the right because you've given it to them. The payment varies by the type of equipment placed on the property. I'm not here to talk about the payment today because I don't think that's relevant to the discussion.
Do you want to talk about eminent domain? Or I
That's
can-
discussed later.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so how does the county get paid? The landowners who sign up for these turbines are gonna pay an increased property tax because the wind turbine is considered an agricultural facility or agricultural item. I don't know the correct word for that. Mid-American will pay the incremental property taxes, so anything above what they're currently paying as assessed, like what Jamie talked about, the tax rules there. Mid-American is supposed to pay that. They will either pay it directly or the landowner can submit the bill for the increased rate to the company, and the company has to pay it within 30 days of written notice.
Okay, so the production tax credit, so how these companies are able to afford to put up the turbines are they get tax credits. So over 2/3, a turbine this size is gonna cost at least $3 million to erect. Over 2/3 of that is your tax dollars.
between federal tax credits, which is the production tax credit, the double depreciation, and then state tax credits. So a production tax credit is a federal tax credit. It's for 10 years. It was just renewed in 2015, but it's going to be phased out through 2020, which you can see here. So we go from 80%, 60%, 40%. It's been forecasted that those tax credits will cost taxpayers $40 billion by the time this is phased out.
All right, so I have couple videos to show here.
Oh, I can get that. Sorry.
And I'm going to explain a little bit here. This is Jana Swanson. You'll see her in the video. I did a video interview with her because she farms and they're not done planting, so she couldn't make it here tonight. She is the creator of the Coalition for Rural Property Rights. And so she helps people like our county when we're trying to discover whether these are a good fit or not. She comes in and helps advise us on what we can do. So here's the first part.
Turn it up.
So I guess if I'm going to start off with our first question, I'd like to start kind of broad and maybe address your main concerns with the wind energy in Iowa County or coming in.
Sorry, I think we have another one playing.
To any county, but you kind of know more about our ordinance, how we don't have one yet, and how we already have an agreement with Diamond Trail project, but we're just trying to protect against future projects. Can you give us maybe some of your top concerns with what's going on here?
Well, I think that the wind industry, they know that there are negative impacts from wind turbines on surrounding residents. And they know this. They, they hand out a neighbor agreement. Anybody that lives within a half mile, and probably with your turbines, even a little bit more than a half a mile from any wind turbine, and they list the negative impacts in those contracts, so they're well aware of them. And see, this is our problem. Is that a lot of the landowners that sign up say, well, we can do whatever we want to on our own property. And I always say, well, as long as it doesn't cross the property line. But it is obviously crossing the property line if the wind companies want to give those people a hold harmless agreement and pay them money in order to put up with the negative impacts. Because if they're building in your community, your supervisors have already given them the right to push those negative impacts off on you. So if you don't sign the contract, you still get the negative impacts. But if you sign one of their contracts, they also get an easement over your entire property. And then they also, you also don't have the right to sue them at a later date. And if you do sue them, it will go through a moderator and not through a jury trial.
Okay, yes.
We have just a couple clips here.
You said something about, because we were talking about the pros of wind energy, and you said, well, we don't have to burn coal and things like that. But what I'm seeing is that wind energy is it always has to have a backup. In Iowa, the wind only blows strong enough to have wind energy about a third of the time.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. The wind dies down at night, so
or it doesn't blow enough, or it blows too much, or it doesn't blow at the right times when we need it. So when the wind isn't blowing enough or too much or at the right time or whatever, we always have natural gas usually to back us up. Mm-hmm. Or the nuclear or coal or all of these things. And so wind energy is always wind energy plus the fossil fuels that it takes to back them up when they're not working. Mm-hmm. And for example, in Iowa, we are closing the Duane Arnold nuclear plant, and that was no emissions. Well, we're replacing it with wind turbines, which means we're replacing it with wind turbines and natural gas, which means that there will be more carbon emissions when we close the Duane Arnold than if we have wind turbines. Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And then also, the American Wind Energy Association, their largest boast, and if you go on their website, you can see this, that they say that they cut 189 million metric tons of CO2 with wind turbines. Worldwide, I believe that is what their boast is. Worldwide, 189 million metric tons. But worldwide, the amount of CO2 created by mankind is from the Carbon Project, which is so very concerned about CO2 emissions, and they're saying that emissions in billion metric tons, not million, billion, reaches between 35 and 40 billion metric tons every year. This is from fossil fuels and cement emissions and land use. And now, wind energy is a lot of cement use. There's like 2 million pounds of cement per turbine base. And cement, I don't know if you knew this, emits 0.9% pounds of CO2 per pound of cement. So almost pound for pound, cement emits as much CO2 as what's in the ground of cement. So that was unclear. But what I'm saying is that wind turbines, even if we doubled the amount of wind turbines that we have now in the world, we still would not reach past 1% of the man-made CO2 on the earth. So, and I don't know if they add in all of the.
We just have 2 more clips. The next one is going to be about eminent domain, which I think is a topic that a lot of us are curious about, especially with this project. If you live next to the turbines or where the easements are, I would be a little bit nervous right now.
Feel a clean, slick, green spiel, and it's just not that way.
Yes. Okay, I have 2 more questions that I think I want to cover. The first one, kind of going back to talk about the power lines that are eventually going to have to come through with these. Eminent domain. We know the Supreme Court just voted on the Dakota Access Pipeline, which has precedence for this. Thoughts on that, and is that a real threat in Iowa County, or is that just some big scary word that we don't need to worry about?
Well, if you've signed a wind lease agreement, wind easement agreement, you have already given them permission to come over your land power lines. Almost every contract I've ever read says that you might get a wind turbine, but you might not. But that you have given them permission to put transmission on your ground, whether it is this project or any other project. You've also given them permission to put on batteries and roads for that, and the contracts never say that they need to pay you any more for any of this.
Yeah, the transmission line in our contracts that I've read for our.
Okay, one more, and then she's going to kind of describe what kind of company that we're facing when we sign these easements, the bad animal that we're going to be dealing with.
The attorney looked at it and said, "Don't ever sign anything like this. You are giving away so much by signing one of these contracts." And I know that in this world we are so used to just, all right, well, okay, it says this and that and the other thing, and I'll just, because the way they explain it, we're just going to take a little bit of ground and we're going to put a little tiny wind turbine on it, and you're going to get a check, and anything that we destroy, we're going to give you money for that and stuff. Well, farmers will tell you that sure, they'll pay you for crop loss for maybe like the first or second year, and they'll cut you a check. And it's not about the amount of crop that you lost. It's just, well, here's a check for that. And basically after you sign the contract, you need to do whatever they say and do it the way that they say. It like in Edgar County, my friend John Williams, who
Okay, can you hear me? Perfect. Can we give these guys a round of applause? They did a great job. I'm gonna take a pause. Rita is gonna be passing around a petition sheet. If you have not already signed online and would like to sign to ask the county for an ordinance with a half-mile setback, as well as noise limit at non-participating property lines.
Where did I put my
Put your
water?
name down and fill it out.
Outline it.
Go to the next slide.
Okay, I'm on.
All right, more negative impacts. Jana touched on a little bit of this, some of the stuff that's signed in a good neighbor agreement. But I think the biggest concern with the turbines is the noise. It can be heard and felt. The feeling that you feel is a vibration that they send out. It can be heard and felt up to 2 miles away. If you look at the American Academy of Audiologists, they have a really great article that I would like to refer people to read, and saying how it can penetrate through your home and through your bodily cavities. While Innovenergy claims that they sound like a refrigerator, you will hear from time and time again from people that live by them that they are louder than that. I don't think the company is asking for neighbors to sign an agreement not to talk about it and giving them money if they were really as loud as a refrigerator. The biggest thing that we see too is the sleep disruption, the headaches, the heart palpitations, the vertigo, the dizziness, and I want to touch on the sleep disorders on the next slide. But first, Janie has a letter from someone that does live by these, and she wanted to be here today and couldn't, so she sent us a statement to read.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, so this statement is from Shelly Marsh. She's from Madison County, Iowa. So she said, "Good evening. This is hard for me to share, and we are not people to jump on every little cause. But because I would not wish this on my worst enemy, I will let Janie read my statement with hopes that my story will help you understand the health and safety issues industrial wind turbines bring. My husband and I live on the Adair-Madison County line. We have built, maintained, and improved our property for over 40 years before Adair County began their Arbor Hill wind project a year ago in the spring of 2018. This project has been in the works since 2016, but we had no idea. Sound familiar? Everything was kept so quiet to the point of having a gag order in the easement contract so no one could speak about it. I would like to share what my experience has been since the placement of 140 500 to 600 foot industrial wind turbines a half mile from my home. This wind energy project has been life-changing for us. We are devastated, to say the least. The peace of mind we once had and our quality of life has changed. The beautiful views we once enjoyed are now saturated with industrial chaos. Wind turbines are no comparison to cell towers or water towers. The noise from wind turbines is very stressful, annoying, and invasive. Depending on the direction and strength of the wind, they sound like constant, low-flying jets that do not go away. I had an accident 4 years ago and was diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome. I was finally feeling healthy again, but since being subjected to these industrial wind turbines, I am going backwards with my health issues. The constant motion from turbines are a nightmare for me. At times, I become instantly nauseous and dizzy, and then vomiting sets in. This can last for hours. I now have daily headaches and migraines are debilitating. I have experienced sleep disturbance and sleep deprivation for nights at a time. I'm exhausted and the feeling of hopelessness is unbearable. I've been awakened at night numerous times with the sensation of a pulsating pressure in my head and a heaviness in my head and chest. Both my husband and I have loud ringing in our ears. We have had to turn the TV up just so we can hear it. We do not want to leave our home in Madison County. 5 generations of my family have lived here. My husband and I are trying to do everything we can to remain in our home that we raised our family in. Our front yard is heavily landscaped with trees that we've spent $8,000 on, which is a common deterrence that Mid-American will recommend. When we remodeled our home years ago, we placed large, tall windows throughout our living room to enjoy the beautiful country view. Now I am subjected to the motion no matter where I look. At night, our beautiful skies are filled with constant flashing red lights. Everything we created is now ruined. I go through feelings of being anxious to the point of breaking out in a cold sweat and the need to get away. Sadness washes over me, thinking all that we've lost. I do not want Iowa County residents subjected to the harm wind turbines will bring. Residents of all ages will be affected by the noise, motion, shadow flicker, and light strobing. My hope is you will consider what I've shared. This cannot be just about money. You can be the richest person in the world, but without your health, you have nothing. Amen.
All right, to extrapolate on that thought, we're going to have a video here. Ted Harkey, I'm in personal contact with him. He's a really great guy. He also wanted to be here, but he also farms and cannot. But he is from Illinois. He was an engineer, pro-wind, thought the wind turbines were great. They built him next to his home. He was fine with that till the day they turned them on. They were placed 1,700 feet, was the closest one to his house. Ours will be 1,600 feet from the corner of your home, or can be, I should say. So I want to show this video where he describes what it's like to live next to him and what his family went through.
1,665 feet away. This is a photo in my backyard. This is my kids' playground equipment, and that Invenergy turbine is about 1,600 feet from our playground equipment. So as that thing spins, it really looms over your backyard, and it does demand your attention a lot. This is a picture from my front yard. My wife and I's bedroom is right here at the corner where the sidewalk curves around the house. And this turbine is the next closest one. It's 2,225 feet away. And our first complaint we sent to Invenergy was to Marlon Connery. It was on January 22nd. I texted Marlon and said, turbines are unbearable tonight. We need to talk. I've been awake for 45 minutes praying for wind direction change or speed change to quiet the machine noise. We experienced audible and the low frequency noise in our house. There was times we were waking up with panic attack type of feeling that we're shaken awake, that we're suddenly awoken, and it was an eerie way to wake up. It's a feeling of something is wrong, there's an emergency, someone has just pulled into our driveway, the kid fell out of bed. It's type of a jolting awake noise that would wake us suddenly. Other times it was an audible noise, which is a turbine grinding away, and I described it as an engine noise, like a car parked in your driveway, but yet you're awake because you anticipate they're going to come to your door and bang on your door any moment, type of feeling. I already said that turbine was 2,225 feet away. This is my daughter. This is a photo we took in July of 2013. It was very late at night, 11 o'clock I think, and she was very upset. None of us were able to get to sleep. The audible noise was in our house, in her bedroom, and we tried, cover pillows on your head. You try that, yeah, Dad, we did. And, she said, I have an idea. She ran to the toy box, grabbed the Hello Kitty headphones out, brought them in the living room. She said, will you let me wear these to bed? And we said, well, you think it makes you feel better? We will. And she tried that. That was a joke. I have testified in other communities before that, kids wear headphones and headgear to tractor pulls and demolition derbies and not to sleep in their bed at night. This is a joke. And wind companies will tell you this doesn't happen. The sound acousticians will put in their report that the turbine noise for your community is okay because it's not going to disturb sleep. That is a flat out incorrect statement because I lived it and I know the truth.
Okay, so if that doesn't move you, I don't know what will. Anyways, more negative impacts from the wind turbines. We're going to talk about farming efficiency. I think most of the farmers in this room will understand that compaction is going to occur. It's going to be pretty hard to undo the damage from a 100-ton crane or equipment coming across your ground. They will build roads, but how well are you gonna undo them? Tile is gonna be crushed. People who are farming next to people that are going to get a turbine. I've heard from people in Powashik County that when the tile's crushed in your neighbor's ground and the company hasn't fixed it yet, it's gonna push the water into your ground. I've had multiple accounts of that be brought to my attention. And then the roads, which we will talk about a little bit later. But I'd also like to bring up John Thompson. Is he here?
No. He might have been working.
Okay, he was gonna try to come here tonight, but we weren't sure. But he's our aerial crop duster. He does quite a bit of the work in Iowa County, and he has made a formal statement that he will not spray within 2 miles of a turbine. I've not talked with the Lowers and heard of what their stance on it. I know they do work for Heartland Co-op, but John also does, and if you have him as your crop duster, he won't be coming within 2 miles of a turbine.
So one thing that I've heard a lot from people from Montezuma is that their signals have been interfered with. So Maggie Short from Montezuma wasn't able to make it here today, but she gave me this statement. My name is Maggie Short. I live 2 miles west of Montezuma near Diamond Lake Park. We had a great view of the lake park from the east side of our house. Now as we gaze down on the lake, the view is ruined by the tops of turbines churning above the trees. The nearest turbine is 3 miles from our house. We're luckier than some because of the trees that surround our house. It would seem we would be unaffected by them, but unfortunately that is not the case. Since they have been constructed north, east, and south of us, our cell service has suffered. We constantly have dropped calls, which is very annoying when you're trying to have a conversation. Also, our TV service has been affected. Some of the channels have interference to the picture while we're trying to watch. I have talked with others who also have experienced the same issues since the turbines appeared. We hear every day how these monsters are producing clean energy, protecting our environment, but I would ask, is that really the case? A few years ago, a pair of eagles built a nest near Highway 63, which was quite exciting. This past year, they didn't come back. I also wonder if the turbines will adversely affect people's health, especially those who live within a mile. Of course, we were told by Mid-American that there is no risk, but I do find it interesting that our friends living within 1 mile of a turbine have been offered a substantial payout not to ever bring a lawsuit against Mid-American. As good stewards of the land, is this really the legacy we want to leave our children, grandchildren, and future generations? They will never know the beauty and the peacefulness of the Iowa countryside. 40 years from now, when the turbine's lifespan has ended, will the countryside be an endless graveyard of turbines, no longer useful, but too expensive to remove? We asked Mid-American that question on April 12th. What happens with this? You can't do anything with that material. You can find pictures on the internet of these graveyards where they just dump this. Please ask yourself, is the monetary gain worth what we're losing? Thank you.
All right, another question that Janie and I get pretty frequently is about the roads. The road damage will occur. I don't even know if I have to explain this. We're gonna have large, oversized loads coming over our bridges, coming over our roads, mainly gravel roads, but they will have to take some highway to get there. But what the county does is they make an agreement with Mid-American about them taking care of the roads. The county doesn't put their own people there. Mid-American has their own people. They do the work and they handle it all. Our county engineer, Nick Amelon, I think he does a great job. From what I've talked to him, he seems like he's brought up a lot of great points. If you have not already, read the EV Star. There was an article yesterday, I believe, about the wind turbines, and they talked about some of the points that he raised that the Mid-Americans never even seen before. So I think he is really doing a good job, and he's keeping on his toes on this. But the flip side of that is if we don't create a strong enough agreement with Mid-American that really holds them to their promises and to their words on keeping the road's good, we can have a situation like Winnebago County. Joe Gochi reached out to me and he wanted to talk to me about this because his county was held liable for road repairs. They had to use $20 million in bonds and increase property taxes by 20% to repair the roads that were damaged by turbines in their county. And then Janie highlighted on this the decommissioning of the turbines. So when they're done, not working anymore, too expensive to repair, what happens to them? So Mid-American will have money set aside, give the county money for decommissioning. They'll give them a set dollar amount per turbine. When they're done, the county is in charge of then getting rid of them, from my understanding. And so Harold Joseph did an awesome job at the last county meeting of raising the point about, if you look at what a truck cost 25 years ago and what it costs now, and look at the inflation on that, three turbines were taken down this last month in another county in Iowa that cost $150,000 each. What are they going to cost 25 years from now? We want to make sure that we're keeping that into account when we make that agreement with Mid-American on decommissioning.
I'm going to click ahead. Maybe.
Okay, sorry.
Is that it?
No, this is fine. Okay, so property values. I know that the supervisors have said that they've done their research and that property values do not decline. Okay, as with any situation, you can find pros and cons. My issue is that the material that is on the supervisor's page is by the Iowa Environmental Council. We looked into their reports. They are paid by Mid-American. They are funded by Mid-American. So, we've taken a snapshot of 10 different independent, unbiased studies on property values. This might be hard to see. It's also in the appendices, but they show anywhere from 20 to 60%. In this table, I also found, I think one in Illinois even said that property values were negatively impacted by 80%. Homes for sale stay on the market anywhere from 6 months, I've seen, to 12 months longer. I think it's common sense that nobody wants to live next to a turbine. We built our home on the west side of Williamsburg, and if we would have known that we were going to have a turbine 1 mile from our house, which we will, we would not have built our home. I think you've all seen a number of homes go up for sale recently, within the last month, out in the country.
Rebecca.
And then is Rebecca here? So just to echo this statement, so that you guys don't get sick of looking at Abby and I.
Good evening. I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of better things I'd rather be doing this evening than sitting in here in this hot room. And it's really a great turnout that you guys turned out. I'm here with my husband, Chuck. We're a relatively new residents to Iowa County. We moved here about 3 years ago. A little background on us. We met while we were in the military in Germany, and I got out, stayed in. He stayed in for 20 years, and we lived mainly in military housing and in Europe, and we spent a lot of time living below people, on top of people, beside people, really close to people. And we got tired of people. One of our dreams was to be able to find a little piece of land out in the country where there was no lights, no light pollution from town, no anything that would deter from looking up at the stars, from being peaceful. Back in 2012, we had our first experience with wind turbines. We were, I believe it was Madison County. We were heading down to Oklahoma City and actually had to pick up a piece of equipment and got there late in the evening. And the whole time we're driving southwest of Des Moines, we see these red lights, flickering down a lane. And I'm thinking, I know I've been out of Iowa for a long time, but I don't remember there being a big airport here. And so we finally got to our destination, and we asked the gentleman that we were getting the equipment from, what are those lights? What is that? And he says, oh, that's the new wind turbine farm. And I can remember thinking to myself as we're driving away, I never want to live in a place where I have to look at those lights flashing off and on all night long. 2016, we found our little piece of dirt. It's not much, it's about 6 acres, but it's everything that we wanted. And it's peaceful, it's serene. And was it 2 weeks ago where they had this newscast on Channel 9 that said they're bringing wind turbines to Iowa County? And I started doing my research and I went, you know what, how can this happen? What are we getting ourselves into? So last Sunday, my husband and I, we drove to Grinnell and we drove down the gravel roads and we parked and turned off the car and listened to these things. And those are only 200 feet and the ones they're putting in our county are a lot bigger. And I don't know what we can do at this point to stop the ones they've already signed lease agreements on, but the people in this room, everybody who showed up here today, is pretty much proof that we don't want them here. So I'm all for wind clean energy or what we have, but you know, let's control it. Let's put it in places where it's not going to hurt us, where it's not going to affect us. So that's my story.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So to roll with that, I don't know if you guys saw, there was an economic impact analysis that we had on Facebook. So this was derived from Wise Energy. They had a template. They use conservative numbers. All of their backup sources are also independent studies. That's also in the handouts that we provided. But they use conservative estimates for this, and so Mid-American has said that they forecast that the Diamond Trail itself will bring in $2 million per year to the county. If you subtract all of these numbers, property values, I think that's the biggest thing is if people aren't moving here, if people can't sell their homes, if the property values are going down, that means less property taxes for the county. The agricultural losses, this has been surprising, and Abby will touch on this, on why this number is so big. Tourism, we have the Amanas, we have Iowa Lake. My brother's getting married this summer. We had family that was going to stay at the lake. They're not staying there anymore. We have health impacts, and then the water. I've read also and heard from Powesheik County and other counties that the water can be impacted. Your well water quality is going to go down. And then the wildlife as well, which Abby will touch on. And then we have just miscellaneous things. I think this was like hunting. I'm trying to think of what else, but just random things. So in net, you have $7.2 million per year just from Diamond Trail. So we plugged in what the average values are for our homes, what our tourism brings in currently. And this is a conservative estimate per year just from Diamond Trail. Then to the right, you have, out of those counties that we're showing, 3 of them have wind energy. So Winnebago, Adair, and Powesheik County. I just thought that was an interesting thing to show that, do we really need the money? Is it worth it?
And I'd like to add to the slide before we change, even if this forecast that we received from New York State is even slightly off, we can show that the $2 million will probably be offset in some manner. If it's not a loss, I think it's going to at least be offset. So people I know have criticized this and said, oh, maybe that's not 100% accurate. Well, it's not 100% accurate because we don't even have all the data from Mid-American yet. And so I just want to do the disclaimer that it is a forecast, and even if it's not 100% accurate, I think that the $2 million will at least be offset. All right, where's my farmers in the room?
My favorite.
Raise your hand if you're a farmer. Stuart, Jared, thank you. When was the last time you thanked a bat? I'm not killing my bats that get in my attic anymore, I tell you that much. How many of you knew that bats, this is from a study that is done by a government source, that bats are their pest suppression services are estimated at $74 an acre average. So bats are terribly endangered by turbines, and they don't have to be struck by them. They don't have to actually be hit by them to die. The low pressure that is caused, that thing is going to be really hard to see, the bat picture, but it explains it. But the low pressure that the turbine causes and the bat flies by it will actually cause the bat's lungs to explode. This is called barotrauma. You can look it up. But they estimate that 90% of the bats killed by a turbine in recent studies showed that they had barotrauma. So only 10% of them actually were hit by the turbine. So how many bats are we going to lose in the county, and how much are we going to pay for pest control and things like that on our crops this year because we're losing our bats? So then the other part is for the other wildlife. We have migratory birds. I know they touched on that earlier with the eagles not coming back. We're all very concerned about, are the migratory birds going to continue to come through our area if we have wind turbines? And then we also have Denise Mathis to talk about the DNR recommendations that she received.
I'm Denise Mathis. I live in Fillmore Township, clear down on the bottom kind of side, Washington County, Keokuk County, and Iowa County. So I contacted the DNR because we hunt, and I'm sure a lot of other people in here do as well. And I got a message back from the DNR. There are currently no state regulations governing wind energy development. So their recommendations for avoiding wildlife and other natural resource conflicts is just that, their recommendations. The projects are submitted for review to Mr. Moore, who serves as the Environmental Review Coordinator in our Land and Waters Bureau. He does a high-level review of the project in relation to our natural areas inventory, which includes the location of a state-listed species and natural communities for which the DNR has a record. First, they do a high-level review, and the proposed project is overlaid with the following important elements, which should be avoided for wind turbine construction in order to avoid impacts to natural resources. All public land should be buffered by 1 mile. The Les Hills ecoregion, which everybody knows is over on Highway 29. 2,000 plus acres of public land complexes should be buffered by 2 miles. Known bald eagle nest sites with activity unknown should be buffered by 3 miles. Known active bald eagle nest sites should be buffered by 5 miles. 40-acre tracts of grassland, forest, or wetland should be buffered by a half mile. And then there's bird conservation areas, and I don't know what this is, but it says PBJV priority areas. The high-level map is then sent to the local unit wildlife biologist, who does a more thorough review of the proposed site with their more local on-the-ground knowledge. These recommendations are then compiled and submitted back to Mr. Moore, who drafts the official recommendation letter to the wind energy company. But they wanted me to know and let everybody know that there are no current state regulations governing wind energy, and so it's all recommendations. And when I talked to the Land and Wildlife Bureau over in Illinois, the Diamond Trail people had not contacted them yet, and we just had an active eagle's nest that was not certified or whatever, but down on the English River. So 5 miles from there is like Parnell. And we've got several that are going up over there. Thank you.
Well, and I think if I recall right, which so much double, well, it's up there. Is there the eagle's nest on there? Isn't it 1 mile?
It's not even on here. This is the Diamond Trail Agreement, and it's not listed in there.
It's not listed on there. Okay, so we have none of that. We got none of that in our agreement. Janie can come up here and talk next about the gaps in the Invenergy contract.
So what we're getting to is we need an ordinance. Why? I think a lot of people thought that the Invenergy contract had measures to handle the decommissioning and road repairs and all those things. But in fact, I won't read all of this verbatim, but this is also in the appendices. You can see for yourself. We took excerpts from Invenergy's contract. A lot of people are surprised that they cannot talk about negative effects. It says on page 15 and 17, you cannot speak to the detriment of Invenergy or Mid-American. If Invenergy or Mid-American breaches its contract, somebody who signed, I'll just use the words you, if you signed a contract with them, you waived your right to a trial by jury. As Abby talked about, the payments can change depending on how much energy is produced by your turbines. If someone sues you or files an insurance claim, you're liable. And then obviously the county would be liable if without a decommissioning agreement or the county does not have a general liability policy. That was another thing that we requested in the ordinance. So the county could be held liable as well. Let's see. I've also heard that people had to ask for permission to hunt on their own land. So obviously, if you don't have an ordinance, if you can't sue them, if you can't talk about negative effects, where are you going to turn? That's why it was so hard to get people here to talk about it. I hear a lot of people say there must not be any negative effects because you don't hear people talk about it because they signed a contract that they couldn't. Go to the next one. Okay, so
Energy's from Chicago, so they're going to be bringing their super tide out here hunting on your ground. I'm not asking.
So why do we need an ordinance? I think that more turbines will be erected. We've had neighbors and people in the Conroy area and east of town just sign easements lately. Why would Invenergy continue to ask for easements if they don't plan on expanding? Everyone needs protected. I hope that that's the message that we're getting here. Participants, as I just talked about, they waive their right to a trial by jury. They could be held liable without an ordinance. Non-participants, landowner rights go both ways. I have a right just as much to protect my property and my family and not have my property values decline because of my neighbor's personal decision. So I deserve protection. I'm going to be able to see these things. We can see the ones by Millersburg. That's 15 miles away. You can hear them up to 2 miles. It depends on your location. We're just asking for a half mile from non-participants. That's another key thing, is Monroe County and Adair County have 2,500 feet, 2,600 feet setbacks from all dwellings. We're asking for a half mile from non-participants. I don't think that's a lot to ask. And then, as I said, again, the county needs protection as well. I don't know, Abby, if you want to walk through this, what we've requested. So I took the liberty of looking at all of the ordinances in the state of Iowa. There's also a summary on the supervisor's website that is stale, and like 4 of those ordinances have been updated and their setback distances were increased. So on April 12th, I drafted this summary, and then I wrote out an entire ordinance, and I pulled these specific measures from the referenced county on the right side of the table.
We have one more clip.
Excuse me, I have a question.
We'll save questions till the end, please.
Okay.
Is it on that slide? What's your question?
I just want to know if that setback is from the property line or from the house itself.
The corner of the house.
Or the house.
Which one are you referring to?
The setback. Or
The one that we're asking for?
One area is the 2,500 feet.
We're asking for a half mile from non-participants' property lines.
Property line.
But most ordinances, the ones that have 2,500 feet, that's from all dwellings, participant or non-participant.
Something to the effect of that you cannot say anything to the detriment of the company. So I'm pretty sure that ours do have that.
Hold on, let me get to the right spot.
know that the wind industry says that our opposition doesn't know what we're talking about and that we have a lot of misinformation. And I know that the wind industry says that our opposition doesn't know what we're talking about and that we have a lot of misinformation. And my favorite is that we're funded by the Koch brothers. And that's not true. We are all volunteers, and we do this out of a passion for the truth. And the things that we say, we can back them up. We can back them up with documentation. We can, there's so much information out there. Now, the wind industry will say, well, it's all on the internet. You can't trust what you hear on the internet. But communities have done movies, they've done documentaries, they've begged and pleaded for people to please listen to them, the problems that they've had. And the wind industry, basically, Mark Zaccone, I think his name is, he's with Invenergy. I think he comes down to your meetings. And in a Palo Alto supervisors meeting, I asked Mark one time, I said, please, Mark, tell me why there are so many websites and opposition groups and books and videos and movies and everything against industrial wind and talking about all these problems. And he turned to me and he said, they are all lying. Now, I don't think that thousands and thousands of people across the United States that just happen to live within industrial wind installations are lying.
And I have to totally agree with that, because I know people from other counties personally that have come to me that actually are getting the money for the turbine, and they're still so upset with living next to it. They can't even stand it. And so I don't think that they're lying when their pocketbook's getting lined by the company for having it in the first place. All
right, that is it. So, oh, I should probably move the slide. All right, so I think Janie and I have covered all the bases tonight about what we wanted to present to you guys. This is stuff that if you talk to people that live in counties, i.e. Poweshiek County that already has the turbines, they'll tell you the same things that we just said tonight. But we need more help with pushing for an ordinance. I was just at the supervisor meeting last week, and I was told that we're the minority in the county, that the majority of the people are okay with the turbines coming, and they're okay with them coming 600 feet from the corner of someone's house. So I personally don't think that's the truth here. I think that we've got a lot of residents that actually care about other people. And so I need help in this project as far as the petition. Went around, you can sign that. You can sign that online as well. Tomorrow, the supervisors are meeting at 9 a.m. in Marengo, across from the courthouse at the Annex building. There'll be a meeting in which they discuss the ordinance that will be adopted. If you read the EV Star today too, you'll see that they talked about how there could be just one public hearing on this. It could be just tomorrow. So I think if you want to take a stance on this, if you want your voice heard, you better be there tomorrow. They could do 3 public hearings, but they have the right to waive the last 2. So I really think that if you can't be there, you need to email them, call them, tell them what you think, and just get our point across. Anything else, Janie?
Questions you can take tomorrow to the supervisors or just reach out to us personally, but the rec center closes soon, so thank you for coming and for your time.
Oh, yes, Steve. Yes, we have one. Hold on, we have one more person. I don't know how he got missed.
Can I make a comment about the Board of Supervisors? They sat on this for 3 years and did nothing to protect any of you for this. They knew about this and they just sat there and did nothing. They were very incompetent. They're not protecting our county from this. Whether you want it or don't want it, they did nothing. They just sat on it. Let them know that, please.
I might add to that. I brought that up at the second meeting that Lowell McKean said to the boys that day, you boys need to should have done this 3 years ago.
Harold, can you come up to the microphone?
Having said that,
Harold, step up to the microphone. We want to hear you.
He's got good things to say.
He does.
Well, as I started to say, echoing what he was talking about, at the first or the second supervisors meeting, it was mentioned by Lowell McKean. He said, boys, you should have done this 3 years ago. And having said that, last week, I reminded them of that, and they says, no, no, that wasn't said. And bless her heart, she says, boys, I have it on tape. So, yes.
Yeah.
I'm Steve Wedgwood, live in Keswick, Iowa, formerly from Powesheik County. I'm representing the acreage owner. Always wanted to live in the country all my life. When I grew up, when I was young, lived in the farm or on a little acreage there. My wife and I were presented with an opportunity to buy 3.6 acres, good view, had big orchard, lots of room to play. We weren't part of Powesheik County's decision to bring wind turbines in. As a matter of fact, they made it a point to make sure the acreage owners were not informed until the decision was done. We were actually told by the person that sold us our house that they had signed. At that point, what we did is we got on the internet, started doing a lot of research. You guys have already covered the negative impacts. Shortly, we decided it's time for us to move. When they say there's huge property loss in value, we can tell you that we got really lucky until we had the grandson of the owner of our property wanted the place, so we were able to recoup most of our money. Prior to that person, we were looking at roughly a 50% loss in what we paid for the home. It wasn't a big home, but your house is probably your biggest investment if you're an acreage owner, and it's pretty rough to look at that and say, hey, this isn't what I signed up for, and it's pretty rough to make the decision, how do I get out of this? And if I can't get out of it, we were lucky we got out of the house prior to the wind turbines going up, but there was a real possibility we wouldn't have sold it and we would have been stuck. So as you're making your decisions, remember the guys that, they got 3 acres, they got 10 acres. They're not farmers, but they love the country living. I tell you what, I went to the guy that sold us the property and I told them, if we would have known you would do that to us, we would have never bought the place. As a matter of fact, right now we do very little business in Powesheik County. I make a point to avoid going there. There's a couple businesses there, not a lot of money, but it's a couple $100 a week. That offsets some of your $2 million gain in the county. We were looking, actually, we want to be back out in the country, so we started looking in in Iowa County. But guess what? We're not looking at Iowa County anymore. So now we've got some hard decisions to make. Can we make living in town work? When we retire and we really want to be in the country, or in the countryside, are we even going to reside in Iowa? Where can we go to have that country living, the wide open skies? We're so, you might call us weird, we're so weird that we had to replace our light pole. We paid the cost of putting all the utilities back on it. I made sure there was a switch at the bottom. I didn't want the yard light on when I wanted to go out and see the stars. That's just the type of people we are. Had a big garden, had a huge orchard, made our own salsa, made our own wine. Now we're back in town and looking to see what our next steps are. So as you're making your decisions, just don't forget the little guy with the 3 acres. They have rights too. Apparently if you're in Powesheik County, you don't, but should have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much. There's one more thing that I forgot to draw our attention to. This was also from Ted Hartke in the video. And something that I think speaks volumes for what we are about to deal with. This is a letter, and you guys can all read it afterwards, but it's from the superintendent of the schools that his children attended. And I'm gonna just read one part of it. I have noticed that we have some children in our district that appear to be having some medical issues related to the wind turbines. Headaches, lack of sleep, jaw issues seem to be the most common. The students also complain about not being able to sleep or not getting a full night's sleep due to sound issues. We have also been advised that we will be losing a couple of families because the wind turbines are placed close to homes and the families can no longer handle the flicker and noise issues. And to me, that's the most concerning thing. Is this what we're gonna do to our children in our county? That is why I'm here today. I think that's why Janie's here today. We want to protect everybody, but especially the children in our county, and we don't want to see them suffer for greed. Thank you.